In the first half of the 19th century, 1828 to be exact, a mysterious figure appeared in Europe. A young man whose very existence would become one of history's greatest mysteries. His name was Kaspar Hauser, and his life was a puzzle that would turn out to be impossible to solve. On May 26, 1828, Kaspar was found wandering the streets of Nuremberg, Germany. He was wearing ragged and torn clothes, could barely speak, and seemed to know little about the world around him. The only item he had with him was a strange note. The note claimed he had been raised in complete isolation and had never seen the outside world. But now, without any explanation, he had been released into society with one request. He wished to serve the king. Kaspar's story quickly spread across Europe, drawing the attention of scholars, scientists, and the simply curious. People wondered who he was. Maybe he was a lost prince, or a victim of a cruel experiment, or something else entirely. What struck everyone most was Kaspar's ability to learn. Despite his earlier isolation, he quickly adapted to the world around him. He learned to speak, read, and write in a remarkably short time. His curiosity about the world seemed infinite, and with every word he spoke, he shared bits of his mysterious past, of a life spent in the darkness of a small room with only a toy horse for companionship. However, despite his rapid progress in society, Kaspar's life seemed to be filled with danger. In October 1829, Kaspar was found with a head injury, claiming he had been hit in the head by a masked man. He survived several more attempts on his life, which only brought more questions about him to the forefront. Then, in December 1833, Kaspar Hauser returned home one day with a serious stab wound. He said that he had been tricked, told to meet someone in a local garden that promised to tell him the truth about his life and his past. But instead of answers, he was met with a knife. Days later, Kaspar would pass away from his injuries, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and theories that continue to captivate people, even today. The circumstances of his death were as mysterious as his life, leading to numerous theories about who might have killed him, or had him killed. Was he a noble child hidden away for political reasons, a victim of a cruel social experiment, or something else entirely? For nearly 2 centuries now, the world has been fascinated with the story of Kaspar Hauser. No concrete evidence of who he really was has ever surfaced, leaving his identity a mystery. In the early 1700s, the waters surrounding the Caribbean were alive with tales of adventure, danger, and lawlessness. Among the most infamous figures of this golden age of piracy was a woman whose name is still mentioned centuries later, Bonny. Born around 1697 in Ireland, Anne was the daughter of a servant woman and a wealthy lawyer. Her early life was marked by a move to the New World, where her family settled in the bustling port city of Charleston, South Carolina. It was in Charleston that Anne's rebellious nature began to take shape. Bonny wasn't one to follow the rules. Even from an early age, Anne's fiery temperament and independent nature were evident. She defied societal norms, refusing to conform to the expectations placed upon women of her time. Obedience and servitude were not in her nature. She just wanted a life on her own terms. Anne's first step into the outlaw world came with her marriage to James Bonny, a small-time pirate with big ambitions. But then, she met the infamous pirate captain Calico Jack Rackham. He was charismatic, cunning, and had no fear of danger, everything that Anne had been looking for. They had an instant connection, and Anne left her husband to join Rackham's crew. There was only one problem: she was a female. To sail among pirates, Anne disguised herself as a man in order to prove herself. But she didn't care. Anne was finally loose of society's chains, and she embraced life as a pirate, and she was good at it. Men that underestimated her didn't make the same mistake twice. She was respected and feared, and had the courage of the most seasoned sailors, and she quickly became a legend among the other outlaws at sea. On the high seas, Anne found an equal in fellow female pirate Mary Read, who, like Anne, had traded a conventional life for the thrill of being an outlaw. Together, they were an unstoppable force, unlike any the Caribbean had seen before. They plundered and pillaged anyone that crossed their paths. They participated in raids, capturing ships and looting their treasures and goods. It seemed like their lives were a mix of constant chaos and danger, but they wouldn't have it any other way. But in 1720, her luck seemed to finally run out. While sailing with Calico Jack Rackham, his ship was captured, and so was everyone on board. Everyone was shackled and dragged to the courts of Jamaica to answer for their crimes. For Anne, Calico Jack Rackham and his men, there was no escape. The sentence was swift and final. But for Anne, she had one last card to play. Before she was killed, she claimed that she was pregnant. And with that, her execution was postponed. From there, Anne Bonny seemingly vanished off the face of the earth. No records exist of what became of her after her trial ended. She could have died in prison, escaped and started a new life, returned to the seas. Her fate, like most of her life, remains a mystery. Anne Bonny's name lives on to this day, as a legend among legends during the golden age of piracy. Jerome's story begins on a foggy day in 1863, near the village of Sandy Cove, Nova Scotia. On this day, fishermen discovered a man on the beach. It looked like he had been abandoned there. He had both legs amputated above the knees, and he was unable to communicate. The only word he ever spoke was when they asked him his name, and he replied, Jerome. A local family, the Comos, would ultimately take him in, offering shelter and taking care of the man. Unfortunately, without a way to communicate, his past remained a mystery, and speculation ran wild. Some believed he was a sailor who had suffered a terrible accident, washing up on the beach. Others thought he might be a victim of foul play, or even a shipwreck survivor with some kind of brain injury. And even though his voice was never heard, he touched the people of Nova Scotia deeply. He moved from home to home, welcomed by families who saw him as a man in need, and provided him with food and shelter. For nearly 50 years, Jerome lived among the people of Nova Scotia. Families cared for him, and strangers tried to unlock his secrets without luck. And in 1912, he took his secrets to the grave, with his real identity still unknown to this day. On Friday, June 12, 2009, a man carrying a black shoulder bag and standard carry-on luggage boarded a bus bound for Sligo, Ireland. Arriving that afternoon, he took a taxi to the Sligo City Hotel, where he paid for his stay in cash and checked in under the name Peter Bergmann. His details seemed inconspicuous at first: thin, with short gray hair, blue eyes, and a tan complexion. He appeared to be in his late 50s or early 60s. According to hotel staff, he spoke with a thick German accent and was well-groomed and neatly dressed. Though he looked like the typical traveler, his behavior quickly became anything but ordinary. The man was a frequent smoker, often spotted outside the hotel with a cigarette in hand. But it was the strange purple plastic bag he carried with him all over town that caught the attention of surveillance cameras. Each time he left the hotel, the bag was full of items or personal effects. Yet when he returned, the bag was mysteriously absent. Authorities later concluded that he must have disposed of its contents, taking care to do so in blind spots of the public surveillance cameras, making it impossible to know what he threw away. The following day, Saturday, June 13th, the man visited the Sligo post office where he purchased 8 82-cent stamps and airmail stickers. On June 14th, 2009, the man left the hotel between 11 and 11:30 a.m., asking a taxi driver for recommendations on a quiet beach where he could swim. The driver suggested Ross's Point, a quiet coastal spot just a short ride away. The man was dropped off at the beach, where he spent some time alone before being picked up and being dropped off at the Sligo bus station by the same taxi. On Monday, June 15, 2009, the man checked out of the Sligo City Hotel, handing over his room key. This time, he carried a black shoulder bag, a purple plastic bag, and a different black luggage bag, unlike the one he had arrived with. He walked through the streets of Sligo until again arriving at the bus station, still carrying all 3 bags. At around 1:30 that afternoon, he ordered a cappuccino and a toasted ham and cheese sandwich at the bus station. As he ate, he examined pieces of paper from his pocket, reading them carefully before tearing them in half and discarding them in a nearby rubbish bin. By approximately 2:30, he boarded a bus for Ross's Point, the same coastal town he had visited just days earlier. 16 people reported seeing him on the beach, where he casually greeted each passerby. He was described by those as relaxed and unbothered. The following morning, Tuesday, June 16th, the story of Peter Bergmann took a dark turn. At 6:45 a.m., a father and son were training for a triathlon on the beach when they stumbled upon the man's lifeless body. The man was dressed in purple-striped Speedo-type swimming trunks, his underpants pulled over them, and a navy t-shirt tucked into the trunks. The father and son immediately contacted the police, and by 8 a.m., local doctor Valerie McGowan pronounced the man dead. The post-mortem report revealed disturbing details about the man. His wallet, money, and any form of identification were missing. Despite the man having been washed up on the beach, the Sligo medical examiner found no evidence of drowning. Additionally, there were no signs of foul play, ruling out the possibility of homicide. The examination of the man's teeth revealed a life of frequent dental work. And though his outward appearance suggested good grooming and care, the man's internal health painted a much darker picture. He was suffering from advanced prostate cancer and bone tumors. His heart also showed signs of heart disease. Despite these severe health conditions, the toxicology report indicated that he had no medication in his system, no prescription drugs, no over-the-counter pain relievers. Given his condition, the medical examiner noted that he would have been in significant pain and would require medication to live comfortably, yet there was no trace of anything in his system. Further investigation into the name he had provided at the hotel, Peter Bergmann, revealed even more questions. The address he gave for his home in Austria was a fake. No street name existed with the name he provided, either in Austria or Germany. It was evident that the man had gone to great lengths to conceal his identity. After an extensive 5-month investigation, the man's identity remained unknown. He was buried in Sligo, with a modest funeral attended by only 4 Irish police officers. As of March 2025, the man remains unidentified. Despite public appeals in Austrian and German newspapers, no relatives, friends, or witnesses have come forward. The mystery of Peter Bergmann continues to haunt both the town of Sligo and anyone who comes across his story, leaving behind a trail of questions that may never be answered. The man known as the Dolly Gray imposter remains one of football's greatest unsolved mysteries. Claiming to be Jack Dolly Gray, an end from Princeton University, he stepped onto the field with a fabricated past. Rumors swirled that he had been an All-American honoree in 1922, but the only player to earn that title at Princeton was Howdy Gray, another end. Despite this, the imposter successfully played in the National Football League during the 1923 season, suiting up for both the St. Louis All-Stars and the Green Bay Packers, his deception going completely unnoticed. In 1923, the imposter confidently approached Ollie Cray, the owner and player coach of the NFL's St. Louis All-Stars, selling himself as Dolly Gray, a celebrated All-American from Princeton. Impressed by his credentials, Cray signed him without hesitation. The imposter took the field for 3 games, but something was off. His performance fell far short of what one would expect from a star athlete. Suspicion grew, and when the truth was finally uncovered, everyone realized that they had been deceived. The man he had signed was no All-American, but an imposter whose real identity remains unknown to this day. Realizing he had been conned, Ollie Cray decided to turn the tables. After a tough 6-0 loss to the Cleveland Indians, Cray, desperate for cash to keep his struggling team afloat, saw an opportunity. He passed the imposter off to Curly Lambeau and the Green Bay Packers, selling him as the best player on the All-Stars roster. From Lambeau's perspective, it seemed like a solid deal. But 2 weeks later, when the Packers faced the All-Stars at Sportsman's Park, something didn't add up. The game ended in a narrow 3-0 victory for Green Bay, yet Lambeau had seen enough. After the game, he confronted Cray, demanding to know the truth about Dolly Gray. Lambeau's suspicions were confirmed. The player had only appeared in 1 game for the Packers and performed miserably. Then, just before their next match in St. Louis, he mysteriously vanished, boarding a train and disappearing without a trace. Cornered, Cray finally admitted the truth. The entire deal had been a joke, a last-ditch effort to offload the imposter and keep his team financially afloat. He assured Lambeau he had always planned to return the money, but by then, the damage was done. The imposter had come and gone, leaving behind nothing but questions. To this day, his true identity remains one of professional football's greatest mysteries.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Fireside Unsolved. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to help the channel grow. Until next time, take it easy and be easy, you filthy bastards.